Hey y'all, Kyle here. Today I want to talk about 5 collecting mistakes that probably many of us have made over the years, and also discuss ways to maybe avoid them in the future. All these mistakes, please do take with a grain of salt, of course. Really, we're just talking about financial decisions. Sometimes your excitement and other things do play a factor, and I don't want to minimize that. Let's get into it. Now, the first mistake I want to talk about is buying new and or sealed product. Yes, brand new shrink-wrapped video games. Obviously, this is going to apply more to brand new releases of modern games, but you can find new old stock video games as well from time to time on eBay and in local game stores lurking around. It's kind of like buying a new car. As soon as you take it off the lot, you're losing at least 20% of the value. And the same goes for when you rip the shrink wrap off that copy of Dead Space on PS5. This is a game I wanted to talk about because I did buy it on launch day back in early 2023 when this remake came out. It is a lovely remake. I really did enjoy my time with it. Ultimately, this is not the longest of video games, and this was $69.99 when it released. I looked recently, used copies can go for about $35. So this was a case where I was really excited to play it, and ultimately I'm glad I did. But if I had been a little bit more patient, if I had waited a little longer for used copies to start to enter the market on eBay and such, and if I had just been a little bit more cautious, I could have gotten quite a bit of a better deal on this game. Ultimately though, still don't regret it. Another one is Threads of Fate here on the PS1. This was actually sent to me by a viewer of my Twitch stream. Thanks, Nate, by the way. Really enjoyed playing through this game. This is a game that is quite valuable when it is brand new sealed, and by cracking open the shrink wrap, I mean, this lost at least 50% of its value, if not more, by me just taking the shrink wrap off. Again, it's another one of those things that you have to reconcile. It's like, is the experience of it worth the amount of money that you're gonna lose? I don't treat my games as an investment, so for me, it's not a big deal. Another one actually that worked in my favor was buying Irritating Stick here on PS1, and this is a game that I had been looking for a long time and had trouble finding a nice CIB copy, and eventually one day on eBay this one popped up and it was factory sealed. In fact, I've still got the PlayStation sticker seal on the top here that I just slid open so I could get into it. But yeah, this was factory sealed, new old stock from back in the day. And the reason I picked this one up is actually because it was one of those cases where it was going for about the CIB price. I sent an offer and got it for a really pretty good deal. Ultimately, ripping the shrink wrap off of it wasn't a huge, financial hit. And now I've got a pretty much minty copy of actually a really interesting game on the PS1. So it's not always a mistake, but again, you are losing value when you crack these things open, and it's something to consider. Mistake number 2 is going to be not paying attention to the fluctuations and the trends in the market. And I don't necessarily mean go on price charting and look up a game and study the graphs and the ebbs and flows of the pricing. I think that's a little overkill, but mostly I'm talking about just being aware of good times to buy certain things. Now, obviously, all games have market fluctuations. Generally speaking, there is a bit of a trend that is pretty consistent, I would say, throughout the years. Obviously, as a game launches, the price is pretty high. Publishers want to get the most bang for their buck out of sales of a brand new game that they put money into getting made. As that game gets older, it's going to start to dip and it's going to lose value. Usually around 2 to 3 generations out is when a game is worth the least that it is probably gonna ever be worth. And that is normally the time to strike, because after that, we've seen a lot tend to swoop back up and start being worth even more. It's hard to say in the long run how exactly this is all going to work out. I think we're already seeing it a little bit with like Atari games, where it's like it's had that first dip and then it comes back up a little bit. Really, that second uptick is like the nostalgia wave. It's people trying to get games back from their childhood, and now that they're a little bit older, they have disposable income. That's usually when they get in on that second wave. But I think with Atari, we've already seen it start to drop off a second time. It'll be curious to see how much more the market changes, because I think we're getting to the point where Most people that wanted to collect Atari have probably already done it. That's usually just a general trend of how the market tends to work. Obviously, there are exceptions. One that followed that for me was getting Terminator on Sega CD. This is a game that I got for way less than it's worth, and that's because I bought this, I can't remember exactly when, but we're talking at least a decade ago. This was a little further out than like 3 gens, but you know, it was in that zone where really Genesis and Sega CD weren't worth what they are now. It's pretty crazy out there, but I got this in a lot of Genesis and Sega CD games. I got the console too. I got a Model 2 Genesis, a Model 2 Sega CD, probably about 20 games, and I think I paid less than $200 for that whole bundle. Nowadays, what I paid for that whole bundle would have only got me this game. This game is worth almost $200. I think partially because it's a great game based on a great movie, right? That helps a lot, but also just in general, Sega CD has got more expensive. Genesis has gotten more expensive. So I was glad to get in on this when I did, because nowadays there'd be no way for me to justify spending that much money on one game. Even though it is great, I would say play this one however you can, whatever you gotta do. Another example I have here, this is one where I got in at the wrong time. This was a case of buying in basically the post-COVID market, and that is Gungrave on the PS2. Now you'll see the price sticker here, it says $84.99. Now luckily I did not pay that much because I actually traded for this. I traded in a whole bunch of games I didn't really want anymore and was able to basically swap for this. It's a great game by Sega and I do really like it, but yeah, $85. It was expensive at the time. The only way I was gonna buy it was by trading. Since this getting purchased, it has come down quite dramatically. It is closer to like 45, 50. We're talking almost a 50% decrease. This was one where the market hit really hard. Just good to be aware of general trends in the market. Post-COVID, like 2022 era was not a good time to be buying video games. This was one where I probably overpaid by a significant amount. Next, I want to talk about one that I feel like gets glossed over quite a bit, even though it's really apparent when you watch video game collection room tours and stuff like that, and that is Brand Allegiance. I think this is especially hitting right now in the 6th gen with the GameCube. GameCube prices have just gotten insane, and I refuse to participate in that market. There's no way I'm gonna do that, especially with the multi-plat prices, and when you consider the fact that you can get a lot of those same games on PS2 or Xbox for a fraction of the price. You're paying that Nintendo tax when you're buying GameCube compared to other stuff. I have just a few examples here. First off, I've got Crazy Taxi on the PS2. I paid like $10 for this game not even that long ago, and if you look this up on GameCube, price charting has it closer to like 20, 25. I mean, we're talking over a doubling of the value just because it's on GameCube. Next up, we've got Speed Kings. This is actually a pretty sick one. Very underrated by Acclaim. This is an awesome arcade style bike racing experience. I really enjoyed it. I got this one at PRGE a couple years ago for like $7.50, and this is another one that if you were to get it on GameCube, it's like $25. This version runs better too, which is crazy. You're paying more for an inferior version on the GameCube. And lastly here, I've got Soul Calibur 2. Obviously this one's gonna be a little bit of an arguable one because the exclusive character is gonna change depending on which version you get, but this is another one. I think I paid like $3.60 or something for this copy of Soul Calibur 2, when again, the GameCube version's like 25 or 30. Also, I mean, the GameCube version's got Link, so it's not exactly comparable, but you get the point. You're paying more for the Nintendo name, and in a lot of cases on PS2 as well, you do pay more for some of those PS2 editions, when the Xbox versions are honestly usually really good. They run the best. Not only that, but they're the cheapest. I don't see why more people don't collect Xbox, but hey, I'm personally going to take advantage of it. Mistake number 4 is going to be buying must buy or must play or essential games when you're not sure necessarily that they're essential for you. Now, I do have an example for this, and I know a lot of people really like this game, but this was definitely one of those for me. This is Conker Live and Reloaded on the original Xbox. I will say this game is gorgeous. It looks amazing on the OG Xbox. Honestly, it could pass for like a 360 game, so I will commend it there. It is a beautiful looking game, but ultimately when it comes down to it, I wasn't huge into the gameplay of this title, and I found the humor really not my style, and unfortunately this one just did not gel with me. I think it's probably gone up since I bought it. I think I paid about $25 for this. This one kind of sits in the collection just because it is an OG Xbox exclusive. It is one of the nice titles on there that does run on the newer Xbox and looks even more incredible on the Xbox One and the series and all that. Yeah, this is one that a lot of people tend to praise online, and personally I just wasn't that big of a fan. In a lot of cases I would be a little more wary when people say this is a must-own title. You know, make up your own mind, try it before you buy it, because I think we've all been kind of roped into peer pressure and trusting opinions when, you know, maybe we have a hunch that it's not going to be for us and we buy it anyway, and then there's money wasted, you know. So that's another one to watch out for. Now this last mistake is going to be a little bit counter to the last one, and that is people not taking risks with their video games. And I don't mean trying the must plays. I'm talking about like the more obscure, the more cheap bargain bin kind of titles that I think a lot of people tend to pass up because they assume, you know, they're not getting talked about on YouTube videos or by other gamers, and they're kind of just forgotten to time. I think a lot of people assume those games just aren't going to be very good because people aren't discussing them, but I am here to say some of my favorite games have come from the bargain bins. I've got actually two driving games that are very similar here. We got Stuntman and Chase Hollywood Stunt Driver. These were both $2.99. They might look a little budgety, they might not totally grab you, but I'll say I've had more fun with these two games here, and the value here is incredible. These are perfect examples of what I'm talking about. These are games that don't get mentioned too often. Probably, if anything, Stuntman gets mentioned a little bit. I think Chase has just been forgotten to time entirely. But these are really fun driving games where you star as stunt drivers and you do all these missions, shooting scenes for action movies. Great concept. Weirdly enough, these came out around the same time. I don't know if they knew about each other's development. Really strange timing on that. I would love to know the story behind that if there is one, but they're both super cheap and they're both really good. Another one I've got is Pro Pinball Big Race USA. This is another one that I think I've never heard anyone talk about, but I saw it at the store. It's only $2.99. I'm like, you know, I like some pinball. I'll take a chance on this. The Pro Pinball franchise, the developers behind this know their stuff. These are incredible pinball games in terms of physics, the level of detail on the boards, all around super high quality product, and you pay next to nothing for them now. And it's like one of the best pinball games I've ever played. Go figure, right? Last one I got here is No One Could Stop Mr. Domino. This is a puzzle game published by Acclaim in the US. This is developed by ArtDink, which is a really unique developer from Japan. They do a lot of crazy, wacky stuff that tends to be pretty good. I took a chance on this one. I hadn't really heard about it, never seen it played before, and I think I paid under $10, and this has since become one of my favorite puzzle games on the PS1. You play as this little domino guy, and you're going around basically these circuits, and you're dropping dominoes as you run to create chains, and you're activating certain traps and objects, and the goal is to full combo each map, and it's really great. Very unique concept, plays really well, and I think since I bought this has gone up in value too, so that's a plus side. Not that I treat my collection like an investment, but hey, you know, it's cool to see when games go up after you buy them. Anyway, guys, that's gonna do it for me today on the 5 mistakes when buying video games. Now, obviously, not all of these are like huge mistakes, but I think they are things that we should consider a little more often when we're buying video games. Like I said earlier too, obviously emotion and excitement override some of these things, right? Buy that new game if you really are excited to play it. I'm not saying don't do that, or, you know, don't take somebody's recommendation on a game that might be worth playing. Just use best judgment, decide whether each purchase is right for you, and just think about where your money's going. That's really all I have to say. So thank you guys for watching, and take care. Refuse to participate